Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and you hear this fun chat, watch this fun chat, wherever you watch this fun chat, it's going to be a great day because this is another wonderful guest telling about the 1950s story that he observed or learned about in the decades since then.
Jackie? Hello, everyone. Welcome to this next installment. Actually, it's number 252. We welcome you, and then cast your eyes on the lower part of the screen, and please do check out www.whilethewindmillwatched.com. All there you can find much information about the book which spurred this fun chat, and the book is up in that corner of your screen. While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s. So this website will give you some more information about the authors, about the book, about news and events, where you can purchase it, and all the previous 1950s fun chats. One way you can go find them also is to go onto YouTube, the 1950s Fun Chat, and there you'll find many of our guests. So today we're going to talk about something I believe would be familiar to most of you. When people hear the phrase a one and a two, who comes to mind? Well, Lawrence Welk, of course. Today's chat will center on that musician. Our guest is Dr. Lance Richey. He is the author of the 3-volume biography, Champagne Times, Lawrence Welk and His American Century, which, by the way, won the Independent Press Award for the Best Historical Biography this year. Lance is President Emeritus and Professor of Theology at the University of St. Francis in Fort Wayne, Indiana. He holds doctorates in philosophy and religious studies from Marquette University in Milwaukee and has published widely in both disciplines. He also holds a certificate of pre-theological studies and a Bachelor of Arts in History from Furman University in his birth city, Greenville, South Carolina. Now, Lance previously taught at Cardinal Stritch, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, University in Milwaukee, Conception Seminary College, and the Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts. Lance and his wife, Carol, have 5 children. Well, Lance, we welcome you to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here today.
We're great to have you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you to write a 3-volume scholarly biography of Lawrence Welk?
Well, you look in the mirror some days and you say, how did I get to this point in life?
That's right.
I've always had a fascination with mid-20th century American history, even as a child. In college, I was a history major. And I always thought, I'd like to write a history book one day. And then my career took me in other directions, philosophy and theology and university administration. But about 15 years ago, I was in a thrift store and I ran across a copy of Lawrence Welk's autobiography for $1. And I bought it and read it, and I found it fascinating. And then a couple of years later, someone invited me to give a talk about whatever I wanted to talk about. And I thought, well, I'll talk about this book. I enjoyed it. And people were fascinated. And I turned it into a magazine column. People loved it. And then things kind of unfolded from there. And it took me about 10 years of research and writing in my spare time to complete the set. But it was a journey through the 20th century. And I absolutely loved doing it.
Mm-hmm. So have you been to North Dakota? Have you been to his hometown?
I have been to Lawrence's hometown. For the last 11 years, I make at least one trip a year to North Dakota. I head out to Strasburg almost every time to visit the homestead. Elsewhere in my office, I have a brick from his birthplace.
Aha.
And I have many friends in North Dakota, especially in Fargo. Lawrence's archives are at North Dakota State University in Fargo. So Fargo is my usual primary destination, but making a trip out to Bismarck, making a trip down to Strasbourg, always a pleasure.
Gosh. Were you aware of Lawrence's Germans from Russia heritage before you started this?
I had no idea. I did not know what Germans from Russia meant. It was a new concept to me. Absolutely fascinating. And I learned a great deal about European history from that. I learned about the tides of immigration across that continent and then to our continent in the late 19th century and early 20th century. And it very rewarding to study that.
You have gathered so much information about Lawrence Welk's life. So please expand on that. Give us background, maybe his career struggles before he hit the big network and TV network in 1955. And then how did this prepare him for his later success?
Well, I would be remiss if I did not show you the set of books.
Okay.
We've got the 3-volume box set from North Dakota State University, Lawrence Champaign Times, Lawrence Welk and His American Century. And I really named it that because when I thought about the book and I thought about Lawrence's life, it was a story of America.
Absolutely.
He was born in 1903 in Strasbourg, North Dakota. His parents had immigrated from Russia. They were German-speaking Russians, immigrated about 10 years earlier, 1893, had settled in North Dakota. And he grew up entirely in a German-speaking community. Everyone spoke German. He did not speak English until he left home at 21. So when you hear him say a one and a two, and he sounds like he's got an accent, he does have an accent. English was his second language. He was always kind of self-conscious about that. But grew up on a farm, grew up in a very devout Catholic family in small town North Dakota, and worked like a dog. He left school at 4th grade. When he was 10 years old, he got sick, was out of school for a year. And after he got better, he felt he was too big and too awkward to go back and miss a year of school. So he told his father, I don't want to go back to school. And his father said, well, don't go back to school, stay and work on the farm. And so, from the age of 11, he was working full time on his father's farm. And while he was, I think good enough at farming, he didn't really have the knack for it. His mind was about music. Ever since he was very small, he had loved to listen to music. He wanted to make music, and he dreamed of becoming a musician. When he was about 17, he asked his father if his father would loan him the money to buy an accordion, a real professional level accordion that he could go out and make a career with. It cost $400, which in 1917 on a homestead farm in North Dakota was a huge amount of money.
Sure.
And he told his father, if you buy it for me, I'll stay at home for the next 4 years until I turn 21. Every penny I make playing, I'll give you all the money. But buy it for me. And his father surprisingly consented to that.
Was there a lot of music played in the home then?
Huge amount of music. They were a very musical family. His father had an accordion, a push button accordion. And his father and his brothers played clarinet, played accordion. There was an organ in the home. So he grew up in a music loving family, but for his father and his siblings, music was a pastime. It was not a career. And his father actually argued strongly against him going into music because he thought it would lead him into sinful professions, so that he would be out in bars, he would be out in places where he'd lose his faith. And Lawrence proved him wrong. What I found in writing my book was, when Lawrence left home, he promised his father, I'll keep my faith. You don't have to become a person like that to work in this business. and he kept his word. When he died at age 89 in 1992, he was still a devout Catholic, a devout Christian, who really did try to live by those standards and didn't understand the world as the country changed in the 20th century.
I can certainly somewhat identify with what you're saying here, because in our home, the Lawrence, in the 50s, 60s, the Lawrence Welk show, that was the program to watch on Saturday nights. And you love, at least speaking personally, I love the man just because for how he personified his life through his actions and his continuous smile. That was what huge. And then later on, how his orchestra and staff, how polite they were and gracious they were to him.
Lawrence was very much, he was part of that older generation. He grew up in the teens, in the 20s, got married in the early 30s. So he was a pre-World War II American. And he made it big after World War II. But to me, that's the really fascinating thing about Lawrence Welk, is that his whole appeal was kind of a nostalgia for an older, simpler America, even in the 1950s, especially in the 1950s. I think what made him such a success in that decade was that he didn't challenge traditional values. And the 50s were really a pretty dynamic and changing decade. It's not all happy days and stable. You had the rise of rock and roll. You had Hollywood becoming much more edgy than it used to be. Television coming into people's houses was bringing a lot of new values, a lot of urban sensibilities to a still predominantly rural country. And Lawrence was an alternative to that. Lawrence knew that, well, he would say, who controls the TV set? The mother does. And so if you do one joke or one song that makes the mother turn the TV off because the kids are in the room, they'll never turn it back on. So he made sure that on his show, there was never any double entendre, that there was never anything too saucy that you wouldn't want the whole family to watch it. And that means old-fashioned. That means 1920s, 1930s values presented in the 1950s.
How do you think that attitude would be accepted today on television?
Well, he's still on television. There's, you know, I think personally there probably will forever be a market for that. Of not everyone goes to television to understand the world or to change the world or to envision what the world should be like. Sometimes people go to TV just to be entertained and have their own values affirmed. And Lawrence's secret to being on TV for so long was he was affirming for people who had those values. This is okay. These are good values. These are American values. These are Christian values in a very broad ecumenical way. Judeo-Christian values, I guess we'd call them. He was not, you know, while he was personally was devoutly Catholic, tons of evangelicals, mainstream Protestants, a lot of Jewish performers and staff on the show. Lawrence didn't care. He just, but it was his show. And on his show, we were going to present the way America ought to be and used to be. And none of that stuff that embarrasses you in front of your kids or bothers you.
Was he ever heckled for his accent?
Oh, people made fun of Lawrence all the time. If you remember back, I want to say in the late 1950s, Stan Freberg made a comedy record, Wonderful, Wonderful. That was kind of it was a comedy takeoff on the Lawrence Welk show, and made fun of everyone on this show. I think had the he talked about the Lennon Sisters, and the like, made fun of Lawrence's accent. It became a big hit record. And Lawrence just laughed at it. It really, in my opinion, it
Yeah.
kind of had an unpleasant edge to it. I thought it was, some of it was a slightly mean humor, but Lawrence's attitude was, if people are laughing, they're thinking about me. And they'll go watch my show to see what this is all about.
That's true. Yes.
So let's go back to that question that I asked. How did his early life on a farm prepare him for his success?
I'd say in probably a good 3 different ways. One was the work ethic. I mean, being on a North Dakota farm, you work constantly. And Lawrence, from a child on, out in the field all day, plowing fields, haying, taking care of the cattle, in his spare moments, practicing accordion. Sometimes when he got better and would go play barn dances or weddings, he'd be out all night, get in at sunrise, just start to work on the farm. And he said late in life, he said that work ethic, the discipline that came from being a farmer, served him throughout life. While he didn't want to be a farmer, he had an amazing capacity for work. He could travel on the road for weeks, and every day was driving all day, playing all night, sleep a few hours, and repeat. And everyone else got worn out, but not Lawrence.
No? Okay.
And he said it came from growing up on a farm, growing up in a small town. He really had a sensibility of, he wanted that one-on-one personal connection with the viewer. His TV show was different than a lot of TV shows. With his musical family and with his musicians, he always wanted the cameras to single them out so that people could identify with these people. And he didn't look for glamorous stars. If you look at his cast, they're attractive people, they're handsome and pretty people, but they kind of look, he would say, and others would say, they look like the pretty girl or the handsome guy in your neighborhood, not some incredible Hollywood starlet or star. His idea of beauty was one that was familiar to you. And then finally, I think his religious faith. He really was immigrant patriot, immigrant religious. He was unabashedly patriotic, the way that only the child of an immigrant can be. He recognized how much America had offered to him. And on this month where we celebrate, the 250th birthday of our nation, Lawrence would have been blasting it across his show if he were still making TV shows about how great America was. He really loved our country, and he really loved his faith in a very small town way.
Yes, yes. What an honor that it was to grow up with him coming into our home weekly.
And you said one word I feel that really stands out, and that was family. His fellow workers were his family, and he treated them as such. And he
really did. Lawrence looked out for his workers. He could be a very demanding boss, and some people did not like working for him because he really he demanded that you be a high performer and that you put the show first. But he looked out for his employees. He was one of the first people in Hollywood to start creating retirement plans and profit sharing. And so if you, when he went on TV, within a couple of years, he had set up plans so that if you were working for him, you got profit sharing. It got put into a retirement plan. If you worked at least 10 years, it became yours. Many of his performers not only made good money because he had so much work that they could really earn a stable living, but when they finished, they had a retirement that most people in entertainment didn't have. I've met with Mary Lou Metzger. You talk with other people who worked for him. He set up his people for success later in life, and they had something that most entertainers never had, which was stability. And that's because he cared for the people.
Yes.
How did he meet his wife?
In 1927, Lawrence was leading a 4-man band up in central North Dakota, playing around Bismarck. And it was December. They'd had enough of the winter. and he wanted to go to the Mardi Gras, and he wanted to play his way down to the Mardi Gras. That was one of his dreams because he loved Dixieland jazz.
Okay.
And drove all night through a snowstorm, and about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, his musician said, "We got to stop at the next place. We can't tolerate this ride anymore in the snowstorm." And they stopped in Yankton, South Dakota.
Oh, okay.
And the next morning, while the guys were sleeping, Lawrence went out for a walk, because that's Lawrence. You sleep 2 or 3 hours and then you start the day. And he went to the nearby radio station, WNAX.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he literally just walked in the radio station, went up to the recording studio and told the manager, "Hey, I'm a musician. I'm passing through town. You know, we'd be happy to play on your show this morning." And the manager said, "Go get the musicians. We'll do it." And he said, "Don't you want me to audition?" He said, "You can audition on the air. Just get started."
Oh,
People loved it. They got all these phone calls, and the manager said, "Why don't you come back this afternoon? Why don't you come back tomorrow for the rest of the week?" And within a couple of weeks, he had given Lawrence a permanent slot on the radio station. Lawrence didn't make it to New Orleans. He stayed in Yankton for 3 or 4 years.
Oh my.
And also in Yankton was a hospital and a Benedictine convent that ran a nursing school, and a Sacred Heart school of Sacred Heart convent. And they ran a nursing school. And one of the nursing students there was a young lady named Floren from St. Anthony's, North Dakota.
Oh, okay.
And she was a German Russian, and she had come down to Yankton to learn how to be a nurse. She was a couple, 3 years older than the rest of the young ladies. And she said later, "All my roommates and girlfriends are saying, 'There's this cute band leader. You got to come see him.'" And she said, "I don't have time for that."
Yeah.
And they finally talked her into coming down to the studio. And when Lawrence laid eyes on her, he fell head over heels in love. She didn't want anything to do with him. She didn't want to talk to him. He had to pester her. She finally agreed to go on a double date or two. And it took a while because she wanted to be a nurse. She wanted to be a professional woman and have her own career. But Lawrence wound up winning out. And he married her in 1931, and they were married for the next 61 years until he passed away. And she gave up being a nurse. For a while, she dreamed of, once the kids are grown, they had 3 children, and she thought, well, once the kids are grown, I can go back and be a nurse. But by about the time the youngest kid was hitting college, Lawrence became a national star. And that kind of put an end to that. I mean, his career became so big that she was never going to go back and be a nurse somewhere. He picked the right woman. Fern was a remarkable woman, very North Dakota, just like him, small town, born German speaking, able to work enormously hard, long hours to raise the family. And she had to, because most of the time the kids were growing up, Lawrence was on the road trying to make it as a musician. She really spent most of the first part of her marriage as a single mom, because he was always traveling, trying to support the family. He would come into town and stay for a while and then hit the road again.
How long did that group of band members stay with him in those first years?
He had lots of turnover. I couldn't even track everything. They came and went. He found a few members who became longer time members, but in all honesty, they might come and stay a few weeks, a few months, come and go. He was the stable member, and then a couple of others he picked up wound up being longtime members. But in his early years, he was a small-time band leader. Had a show on the local radio. It was the only radio station around, so everyone heard you. But he wasn't making a ton of money by later standards. And you were always in a car with him driving down the dirt roads because you're going to play a barn dance that night, and you got to be back on the radio the next morning at 8 a.m. It was a rough life. And when the Depression hit in the early 30s, it became a very rough life.
I bet.
For a few years in the Depression, Lawrence just about hung it up. It got so hard. He and Fern he and Fern went down to Texas and stayed a couple of years. And largely they stayed in hotels. The band would play and work for room and board and maybe enough money to get to the next engagement. It was hand to mouth, and Fern got very tired of it, especially after they had their first daughter. When they came back to Yankton in 1934, she pretty much said, "Lawrence, why don't you give this up? Yeah, why don't you find another line of work, because I'd like to have my husband around."
Mm-hmm.
But he was never able to give it up. It was his first love, and until he was too old to work anymore, he worked 40 to 50-hour weeks even when he was retired.
Yeah. Yes.
So tell us. Go ahead, Jean. I'll save this one.
When did Myron Floren come into the mix?
Myron Floren, very good question. Now, Myron was a South Dakota boy.
Yeah.
And in many ways, he was like Lawrence. Now, Myron was a very devout Lutheran. Lawrence was devout Catholic. But he grew up in South Dakota, and he too thought the accordion might be a way to get out of South Dakota. But he had more education. He actually went to Augustana College, I believe it was.
Yeah, that's a Lutheran college.
He majored in English rather than music because his music teacher said there are no classical music pieces for the accordion, and looked down on the accordion. But he made his way through college, practicing by giving accordion lessons. Served in World War II as a musician, took his accordion around Europe, came back, and he had settled in St. Louis. He was he had his own small band playing in St. Louis. And he had met Lawrence once before, and Lawrence was playing in St. Louis, I want to say in 1949. And yeah, in 1949. And Myron came with his wife to the restaurant where Lawrence and the band was playing. And Lawrence said, "Get up here. I know you. Get up here and play the accordion for us." And Myron did such a good job that when he was done, he went back to sit down with his wife, and Lawrence came over and said, "I want to hire you. Will you join my band?" And that was just about a year or two before they moved to California.
Okay.
And started to make it big. So otherwise, had it not been for that night out for Myron taking his wife out for her birthday, he would have hooked up with Lawrence. He probably would have spent his life in Missouri giving accordion lessons.
So that is a little bit of a segue to my next question. Yeah. How did the radio life morph into the TV life?
Well, radio was big, from the 1920s through the late 1940s. Radio was the primary medium for people to get entertainment in our country, apart from movies, but live entertainment would be on the radio. And Lawrence, did a lot of work on the radio. In 1949, Lawrence was in Milwaukee. He was living in Chicago. He was up in Milwaukee, and Miller, if you remember Miller High Life, the beer Miller High Life, it's the champagne of beers. And he's out driving around with one of his musicians. And the musician said, and it was Roy Fortin, who's from South Dakota. And he said, "Champagne beer, champagne music, you should hook up with them, Lawrence." And Lawrence, that might not be a bad idea. And he went to Miller Brewing and he said, "Why don't you sponsor a radio show for me?" And he talked them into it. And from 1949 to 1951, you had the Miller High Life show on ABC Radio, and it was sponsored by Miller Brewing. And Lawrence would travel the country. He agreed to play, I think, 6 nights a week. And one of those nights would be a national broadcast. But he said, if you sponsor the show 1 night a week, I'll advertise your beer everywhere I go the other nights of the weeks. And so he was traveling around the country doing radio shows. And about the time that ABC decided to end about the time that Miller decided to end that arrangement, Lawrence had made his way out to California. And he was playing on the West Coast just as part of the ABC circuit. And the Aragon Ballroom in Santa Monica in the Los Angeles region. He signed up to do a few weeks of performances there because he was done on the radio show. And KTLA was the local TV station. And they agreed to broadcast one of his performances on TV. And he had never really done TV before. He'd maybe done one or two broadcasts a couple years earlier, but TV wasn't quite big yet. You know, even in the late 50s, most people didn't have TVs. They were very expensive. But in California, they were starting to spread. So in August of 1951, came back to, well, actually, this was in May of 1951. He was in Southern California, and he was playing the Aragon Ballroom for a month, and KTLA agreed to broadcast a weekly show for 4 weeks. Well, after the first night, like, the station was flooded with calls, and Lawrence realized, I reached more people by TV in one night than I probably played for in person in 20 years. Because even then, you're playing for tens of thousands of people. And KTLA said, hey, come back this fall and we'll give you a full TV show. So Lawrence told his wife, I know we've spent our life in the Midwest. He'd been living in Chicago for 10 years, but he said the future's in California. And so in the summer of 1951, he took his band out to California, and he started doing a weekly TV show on KTLA, Channel 5, and performing at the Aragon Ballroom. And he would be on KTLA until 1955 when he went on ABC. And he would be at the Aragon Ballroom until early 1959, when he finally ended there. But by that time, he was a national TV star, the biggest musician in the whole country. So the 1950s, especially, it was just the perfect intersection. He was in California, and post-war America, California was kind of the culture-defining state. He was on television, and by the early 1950s, television was finally pushing radio out as the primary entertainment medium and becoming what everyone watched. And Lawrence had a show that was really in touch with the mood of the 1950s. Conservative, not edgy, good music from the big band era. All the other big bands had died out by then. By the late 1940s, almost every other big band had gone out of business because big band had passed away. Lawrence was the last man standing. And so if you wanted that kind of music, there weren't 30 different bands to listen to. There was really one band to listen to, and that was Lawrence Welk. So he wound up cornering the market on people who like that kind of music. He wound up being on television, the one show that really delivered that to the nation. And his sensibilities and value were, he wouldn't alienate anybody because he'd never do anything edgy or questionable.
When did the Lennon Sisters start with his show?
That's a really good story there. He had been on in the spring of 1955. ABC was looking for a summer replacement show. Lawrence had been in California for 4 years. He was all over the air in California, but he wanted to go national. And ABC offered him a 13-week replacement show just for the summer. And it blew up. It became very big. So by the time the summer was over, they said, well, we'll give it to you for 13 more weeks, and wound up staying with ABC for 16 years. By Christmas, it was a very popular top 20 show across the country. His son, Larry, Lawrence's youngest son, Larry, was a high schooler. And he went to St. Monica's High School in Santa Monica, Catholic high school. And there was a girl in his class, Diane Lennon, and he had a crush on her. And I can see why. I'm a big Diane Lennon fan. And he found out that she and some of her sisters did some singing. And so he asked her out for a date one night, and she said, you know, I can't really go. I've got to go do a performance with my sisters. He said, well, I'll pick you up there. after. She said, okay. But he went and listened to the performance, and he went home and he told his dad, hey, I've got these girls in my high school class who can really sing. You should put them on TV. And Lawrence was like, well, my teenage boy is trying to get in close with some girl. I think I'll ignore this. But a few weeks later, Lawrence came down with a flu, and he was home on Sunday sick. And so Larry called up the Lennon Sisters, and he said, get over here now. Come over to my house. And they came over, and they said, Dad, come out. I want you to hear these girls. So Lawrence was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. I came out, and when they sang, he was amazed. He went, wow, sing again. And by the third song, it's like, I want you on my television show. And they appeared on the show on the Christmas episode, the Christmas Eve, 1955.
Okay.
And people fell in love with them, and they came back again a couple 3 weeks later, came back again. Within 3 or 4 months, they were regulars on the show, and they would be on his show until 1968.
Wow. They grew up there.
They grew up with him.
And we identified with them. We identified with them growing up.
And everybody had a favorite of the sisters. We won't have to go into that, but
we all have our favorites. I'm not gonna give anything away, but I like them all. I did get to speak with and interview Kathy Lennon.
Oh yes,
which was a real joy. And I have a friend, Dr. Robert Groves, who retired out of North Dakota State University in the music department. He had interviewed Kathy, and he interviewed Peggy as well. So they had a lot of insights into Lawrence. And like I say, Lawrence made them stars, and they loved him very much. But it was difficult when they left. By 1968, he only paid union scales. Lawrence would pay union wages, which wasn't a lot of money. And everyone thought the Lennon Sisters were these millionaire singers, and they really weren't making a whole lot of money. Once you take out insurance and just get union scale, they were having to work on the side to kind of help support their growing families. And they went to Lawrence to ask for more money. And he was like, I can't believe you're asking me for more money, because his mindset was, the union says I have to pay you this much. That's what you get. That's why you have a union. The union tells you how much, and if I pay you more, everyone else is going to want more, and then I'm not going to make any money. It kind of ruined their relationship, and he wound up letting them go from the show because ABC said, we'll pay them the extra money. And he said, no, because then everyone else is still going to want extra money, and you're breaking the arrangement that I've made. And he thought he'd lose the show when it became a huge national scandal when the Lennon Sisters quit the show. It was really big news. And Lawrence worried that maybe he'd get canceled, but he said, I run the show. The union says I pay them this much, and I'm not paying them any more than that. And that's the kind of guy he was. He was a North Dakota farmer that way. This is what I'm supposed to pay. And if you're asking for more than that, you're the one being unfair.
Oh my. Different mindset.
Well, I'm going to switch subjects here, but somehow in our prior, before you committed to chat with us, the subject of chocolate milk came up. What does that have to do with your life or with Lawrence's life?
I just love chocolate milk. It's my secret vice. I love carnation malted milk with the chocolate malted milk. I'm a simple man. I'm not a champagne drinker. And Lawrence was not a champagne drinker either. He did not smoke. He did not drink. He led a very kind of puritanical life that way. And I won't call myself puritanical by any means, but I do enjoy chocolate milk. I enjoy listening to Lawrence Welk. I enjoy kind of through him reliving that period in American history that was so wonderful.
Yes. Do you merge those two loves together as you're watching Lawrence Welk? Do you drink chocolate milk?
I do.
All right.
So I have a champagne question. Now, the Miller High Life, the champagne of bottled beer, but when did the champagne with the bubbles, like he would go, to make it pop?
Yes. Excellent.
Yes. You practiced that.
The story for how did he become champagne music?
Yeah.
In 1938, he was playing at the William Penn Hotel in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He, for most of that year, just as the big bands were getting big, he played in Pittsburgh, and he was on the local radio station. People would come to hear him play. And a lady wrote in and said, I just absolutely love your music. It makes me think of bubbles and champagne when I hear it.
Oh.
And Lawrence's manager said, you got something there. Mm-hmm. And so they ran a contest, and she won the contest, and he became champagne music. And his song that he had written kind of has his theme song. They named it Bubbles in the Wine. So the theme song Bubbles in the Wine and the tagline Champagne Music, all 1938 in Pittsburgh. And it gave him an identity. It kept him from just being Lawrence Welk and his orchestra. It was champagne music. And while Lawrence was not a drinker, for the rest of his career, he did champagne music.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so interesting, too, that Lawrence would have champagne ladies. And it was always so fun. He was not just the band leader, but he danced, and he danced so polkas and waltzes so elegantly and with that generous smile on his face. It made you drawn to him even more so.
Mm-hmm. And then, at the end of the show, then the audience women could participate. They get to dance with him for 3 seconds.
Here's another secret to Lawrence's success that he would say, I give people what they want. Mm-hmm. Personally, he liked Dixieland jazz. He liked some other jazz music, but he would say, I don't play that on the TV show. He said, if I play that, half the audience has turned the TV before the song is over. The question is, what do they want? He learned that from barn dances. He learned that from local radio. He learned that from name day parties on the plains. What matters when you're a performer, Lawrence thinks, is what does the audience want to hear? You may not like it, may not be your choice, but you're playing for the audience. And he always insisted on pleasing the audience. When it came to autographs, after a concert, he would stay for hours signing autographs if he was able, because people came here. I don't want to disappoint the people. Yeah. If you were a member of the musical family, the biggest sin you could commit would be to be late for or miss a performance, because people came to see you.
Yeah.
And if you're not there, you have disappointed the audience, and that reflects poorly on Lawrence. And rather than them going home and talking about how great it was, they're going to go home and complain about it.
Yeah.
So Lawrence always was very attentive to the desires of his audience.
Okay. One last question.
Well, let me say fan mail.
Okay.
He got thousands and thousands and thousands of fan letters when he was on TV. He responded to them all, or had his staff respond, and he tracked what they said, and he would keep track of which performer is more popular, who do they like, who don't they like, and he used that to shape the TV show, because if the people like it, it must be good, and if they don't like it, I shouldn't be doing it. That's America.
Oh, okay. Well, then that just led into my question that I won't even ask. You answered it, but you didn't know. Thank you.
This has been just wonderful. I'm going to use it.
Wonderful.
Yes, it is. We are so grateful to know you and to know of your love of Lawrence Welk and the history of the 50s. And our audience will be just as taken with your story today. So thank you so much for being our guest.
Well, thank you for having me today. It's been a pleasure. always happy to talk about Lawrence Welk. And just, I think if you want to understand 50s America, understanding Lawrence is a necessary part of that, because what he was giving the people in the 50s is by definition what the people wanted in that era. Understanding Lawrence is understanding the 1950s in a lot of ways.
Yes.
I feel, personal opinion, that is what everyone wants. That's in our soul. This is what we want. We've deviated from it, but when it gets down to it, that's basic. That's basic. So we thank you all for visiting with us today, our viewers, and don't forget to look at the subscribe button and the thumbs up button, and tell your friends, even your relatives, about this 1950s fun chat. So till next time, toodaloo.
Bye-bye.
Keep a song in your heart.
Yay, man. Bye-bye.